Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Behind me, I got a 17 Subaru Outback, and we're going to be replacing the rear brake pads today. Now, before we go ahead and begin, guys, if you guys haven't subscribed to the channel, hit the subscribe button down below and definitely smash that like button because it helps the channel out. And with that said, let's go ahead and get started on today's video. Before we go ahead and begin, guys, I do want to mention that if your car has a electronic rear e-brake, like most of these do for these years, you will need a scan tool to be able to put it into retraction mode. I've already gone ahead and I've done that. Now, there's different scanners out there, so I'm not going to show you this process in this video because every scanner has a different mode to go into to do it. And another thing that I do want to mention is that this customer is only opting to replace the brake pads. For some reason, even though the brake pads have a little bit of life in them, they said that they want to get them replaced because they have a road trip and they were told that the brake pads were getting low. So either way, we're going to go ahead and replace these brakes today. It's going to be considered a pad slap for those of you guys watching. So that means the rotor or the bracket will not be coming off, but we will be replacing the pads on it. So let's go ahead and get started on the video. So we are looking at our rear brakes, guys. We already went ahead and took off the wheel. And the first thing that you're going to want to do is go ahead and set this vehicle into rear pad replacement mode with the scan tool. Now, this video I'm not going to be covering how to do that, but that is one thing that you got to notate. That's the first thing you should be doing. The next thing that we're going to do is go ahead and remove the spring clip. Now, these spring clips can be on there. So what I like to do is I use a flathead or a pocket knife, which in this case is what I'm doing. We're going to go ahead and hold your finger up top here like I did and come in here and go ahead and lift up on it. And you should be able to get the spring off. It's not really super strong on there, but something you want to be mindful of because it can hit you in the face if you don't take it off properly. It can fly across the shop. So now that we have that off, we're going to go ahead and unbolt our caliper. Now you guys have a view of the rear of the caliper. This is our electronic parking brake motor, and these are our 2 points that we have to remove where our hardware is. And what you're going to do is these have a cap. You're just going to go ahead and remove the cap on both top and bottom, and usually they come off right there just like that. I just use a fingernail, and we're gonna go ahead and use our Torx. It's a I'm sorry, not a Torx, our Allen 7 size, and we're going to go ahead and break these loose just like that. Now these shouldn't be on here with a bunch of pressure, and this car is fairly new, so unless someone's been back here and they did brakes on it, that's the only way these things are going to be over torqued on there. So I'm going to go ahead and work both of these off, and we are going to go ahead and take our caliper off. I've gone ahead and I've got my hardware bolts out as far as they could go. Now these are what they look like, guys. These are generally a slide pin with a Allen head on one end and then the thread portion on the other end. There's not a whole lot you can do to these. You're not really supposed to lube them. They're lube free. What I like to do is take a bit of a cleaning cloth, clean them up, make sure there's no scuffs. I use a Scotch-Brite pad on them if I see they're scuffed up. Clean them up as best as I could. And then what I generally do is I'll spray them down with some silicone spray and I'll just reinstall them. That's how I generally clean these bad boys up. I'm just gonna mention this now in the video because I don't want to make the video too long showing you guys all these little steps. It's quite easy. Just use something that's not abrasive or too abrasive. Just get off any sort of debris, like see how it has a little bit of staining, but most of that typically will stay on there even after you clean it. And then once you do that, all you have to do is come back in here and just reinsert them again. They're supposed to be dry. I've never really seen these lubed up. This car has factory brakes on there, and these are dry, and just like anything out there, they have no grease on them. These are very similar to a lot of Audi brakes or European style brakes, guys. This is not typical of a Subaru brake system, but these rear systems have evolved, and I think they're borrowing some technology from the German friends out in Europe there, because this is very reminiscent of me working on any Audi product, BMW, Mercedes, things of that nature. They use a similar setup. Now that we have the brake pins out, if you did your retraction process, you should just be able to get a screwdriver and come in here and go ahead and fully depress our caliper piston. Now you don't even need a tool for this, guys. If you do this correctly, like right there, I've depressed my whole caliper piston. It is all in and our caliper is nice and moving. And what we're gonna do is go ahead and pull it back, and we're just gonna lay it here to the side. Now I'm gonna have to get you guys out of there and switch up my camera angle. Now that our caliper is just hanging out back here, we have access to our brake pads. One thing that I like to do is use your caliper tool or your piston push-in tool or whatever means you're going to be using to compress your piston there, and go ahead and push it back in. Now my piston's all the way in there. I just basically did this to remind you guys that you have to compress that caliper piston in all the way, otherwise it will not go into place. And now we're gonna go ahead and get our brake pads out of here, just like so. They should slide out, and even though these aren't really super thin or anything, they are kind of getting there, but I don't know why this customer specifically wants them. From what they told me is that Subaru was telling them they needed the rear brake pads replaced, and that's why they're doing so, because they're going to be going on a vacation here pretty soon, and they want the car to be safe. Now typically, I don't like doing brake pad slaps, but in this scenario, if you guys look at the rotor's not in bad shape. It's actually in good shape. Front and back, if you touch it, there's no ridges, there's no burrs. Typically, you should be cutting the rotor. However, you know, this customer is not opting for that. And to be honest with you, it's a lot cheaper to replace the rotor than cut it, especially nowadays. These rotors aren't that much. If your typical shop charges $30 to run the brake lathe on here, you could probably get a set of rotors for $60, $70. And I would typically go with the new option at that point, even though you will probably save a little bit of money cutting them. It just makes more reasonable sense to me to get new ones every time. But this customer, the reason why they even brought me the car is because they don't even want to cut the rotor. I guess they're on some sort of budget. I don't know what exactly it is, but we're just going to do whatever the customer wants us to do, as long as the car allows us. And in this scenario, I've looked at my rotor surfaces. They're within spec. No scoring, no issues, everything is good to go. We're just gonna clean this up with some brake cleaner before we put everything back together, and then we should be all set as far as the rotor goes. Next thing that you want to do once your brake pads are off, we're gonna be cleaning our slide areas. Now I'm not gonna be removing our bracket at all on this one, guys. We're just gonna be simply doing the brake pad swap. But what I like to do is come in here, grab a wire brush, and you're going to want to clean off any sort of rust in these areas from the outside, inside. Just getting it nice and clean so that way we have a nice new backing for our pads to go into. You guys have seen me do this 100 times before. If you guys have watched any of my previous videos, you can do it by whatever means you want. If you have a sandblaster, sandblast them. That's the best way. I have not found any other technique other than sandblasting to be able to do this, but unfortunately on my shop I don't have a sandblasting machine because we don't have the floor space. So I typically use brushes like this, and if this one doesn't get in there, I will typically use this guy, and if I have to, I will remove it. But just for this video purpose, I'm not going to, at least not on camera, just to show you guys that that is how you do it, because the whole point of this video and just replacing brake pads is some of you may not want to go through the steps of removing this, and you just want to do it as quick and easy and simply as you could, and that's the process that I'm showing you. So I'm going to go ahead and clean this off camera, guys, and I'll bring you guys right back in. Alright, I've cleaned up my areas. I went ahead and I sprayed brake cleaner everywhere, cleaned off my rotor. You guys can see it's kind of wet, but it will dissipate here in a moment. And everything is cleaned up and ready to go. We are ready to install our brake pads. Now, one thing on these brake pads that I do want to mention, especially for these Subarus, if you get yourself aftermarket parts, or even the factory ones now, in this scenario we're using aftermarket, you'll get a set of pads like this, and you'll notice one has a cutout. What this cutout is for is this spring. Now inside of your packaging here, you should have your outside spring and your inner pad spring. You have to install these on the set of pads if it's aftermarket. And to show you guys on the old pad, that's what it looks like right there. What this is it basically holds the brake pads under some pressure and allows them to pop up. And the way that you're able to do this, and I don't know how well I'm going to show it on camera, is you just take it and you push it in to the groove like so. And usually you got to use some muscle on it, but you're just going to want to take it and push it in that slot. And once you do so, you can go ahead and proceed further. Now that we have our spring installed, took a little bit. This thing is kind of a hard thing to put on there, but I was able to get it on there. Just got to push on it pretty hard and hold it into place. Now, next thing that I'm going to do before I go ahead and I reinstall these is I'm going to take my brake lube and we are going to go ahead and lube up our contact points. A lot of people say that on this style brakes you don't have to do this, and I would probably agree with them to an extent, but I like putting a little bit of lube because sometimes they can hang up over time. So that's what you're basically looking at. You're not gonna look to put a whole bunch of it on here, just a light coating. And these brake pads typically fall right into place. I absolutely love doing these brakes. Aside from dealing with the whole electronic portion of it, they're pretty easy. And even the electronic portion, if you got the right tool, it's pretty straightforward, guys. Real quick, simple, and easy. Now that you have that set up, just like that, what you're gonna wanna do is focus on your caliper, which is going to be right here. What I like to do, just to cover the bases, any sort of contact areas, I'm also going to put a little bit of lube on here. It just helps it in the long run in case there's any noise. And we're also going to lubricate the outside pad holders here, these little fingers, if you want to call them that. I just go ahead and I apply some grease to those as well. And we are using a brake grease, guys. This is not just regular grease. We're using a silicone based product. So now that we have that done, what we're going to do is go ahead and take our caliper and we're just going to throw it on here. Now we are missing our brake pins. I did have these to the side. I've already gone ahead and I cleaned up my pins here. And if you want, you can replace these. It's up to you. But remember, these go in dry. I just use Scotch-Brite, clean them up, get them nice and pretty, and you know, they will serve another couple years, to say the least. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to come in here and we are going to go ahead and start hand threading these with our ratchet. So just line it up, get a couple of threads on there. Now I am using my electric ratchet, but I'm going to be using it in regular mode just to start them off, just like that. And now we can go ahead and blast them in. And these do not require a lot of torque. It just requires minimal. So this bottom one came out here. And just like that, it is in place. And as far as torque goes, I don't torque these or anything like that. What I do is after I run them down, and you guys notice I didn't go crazy with them, I just take my regular hand ratchet. And I've done so many of these that I kind of know where we should be at. So I'm going to put this in the on position. I'm going to come back here, line it up, and all I'm going to do is just snug them up where I feel it's best. And over the years, you guys will build up, if you do this long enough, a memory of how things get tightened up. So you can kind of feel when these are nice and tight, and we are good and golden right there. The next step that we are going to do is take the caps and go ahead and reinsert them in the back, because you definitely don't want to get any water intrusion on these pins. I believe that's the whole point of using this type of cap on here. And now that we have that in place, I'll swing you guys over and face you towards the front. And we have the last part of this, which is going to be our front clip. And the way I like to install this is I will put it in the first groove and line it up just like that. Then I will install it in the second groove while I hold it in. This can be a little bit of a challenge, but I'm going to pull out and push as I hold it into place. And just like that, it is installed. One thing you can do if you want to be safe, just go ahead and give it a couple hits just like that to make sure it's fully seated. And we are all set and done on this brake job. So we are all set and done with our brake pads, guys. Now one thing that you have to do after you install your spring is use your scan tool to put the car into regular mode for the parking brake, because it's currently set into the maintenance mode. So you got to set that back into regular driving mode per computer, otherwise your car may have a brake light on. But it's just quick, simple, and easy. These brakes are a pleasure to do. Very simple, very minimalistic, guys. Absolutely love doing them. Quite a pleasure. Even though you got to deal with the electronics portion of it, they're still simple. I mean, it just you can't beat them. Now this Subaru does use a European style brake pad. A lot of you that are familiar with brake pads and replacing brakes, you'll notice that this is very similar to your Audi, Volkswagen, BMW, Mercedes style. Very common back rear brake that they typically use on those European cars. And it's kind of interesting that Subaru decided to use one of their designs. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. It works great and it's easy to service, and I absolutely love doing these. They're quite easy to do. So with that said, guys, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Please comment, like, and subscribe because it definitely helps the channel grow. Hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you guys on the next video.